this is a disease, right, that's impacting us. And we've looked at the underlying causes and the symptoms and how do you diagnose it. And for me, it came down to how do you treat it? How do you re-engage people? And so I created the Alive plan. It's easy to do. It's holistic medicine. It doesn't really cost. And it has its roots in one of the most important things a manager can do today. And that's to connect with their employees. Because I will tell you guys, this is not rocket science. It's probably one of the simplest things out there, which is why it amazes me that we're still at such epidemic proportions. It's about connecting with people. It's about having a conversation. I advocate doing this at least once, if not twice a year, where literally, as a manager, with every single person that reports to you, I want you to have a conversation, not about performance. This is not a performance review, right? This is simply about connecting. Whether you have that meeting in your office or you invite someone out to coffee, that's the only place where it'll cost any money. And there are 5 steps to this conversation. I have a client in Salt Lake City, and I used to go out there a lot. And when you fly from San Francisco to Salt Lake, you're usually on one of these smaller planes, kind of like the 2 and 2 across. And I always sit in the aisle, and I was in my seat, and a guy came to get into the window seat next to me, and we met because his laptop fell and hit me in the head. Guy was pretty freaked out, and I'm like assuring him I'm okay, there's no blood. And so he sits down, and we start to have a conversation. And we start talking about, what do you do, what do you do? And he explained that he makes videos for companies, one of whom that he was actually working on was from my former employer. And he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I am writing a book, and I speak around disengagement. And the guy looked at me, handed me his card, and he said, you need to talk to me. You need to interview me. I'm going through that. Now, the guy was probably mid-30s. So I took his information, and we both went back to doing our work, and I went back to putting ice on my forehead. And about 5 minutes later, I get a tap on my right shoulder. And I turn, and it's the woman that's sitting in the seat directly across the aisle from me. I'd say it was a woman about in her mid-40s, and she turned to me in a whisper, and she said, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard what you were talking about. You should talk to me too, because I've been through that. I'm actually transferring and moving to San Francisco to take a new job with my company because I've been disengaged. And I said, well, who do you work for? She went like this, really, like quiet, pointed to her lapel, and it was the pin from the airline we were flying on. Right. Okay, 20 minutes left in the flight. Get off the plane, and on these planes, you have to kind of line up in the jetway to get your bags, right? We've all been there. And this woman, I want to say in about her early 60s, turned to me and said, I was sitting in this row behind you. I eavesdropped as well. I've been through this. I left the workplace. I'd love to talk to you. Turns out she lived a block away from me in San Francisco. We ended up having coffee. Now, I bet you if I got on the loudspeaker of that plane, how many more people do you think would want to talk to me, right? Now, if that isn't a microcosm of society, 3 different age groups all saying, I've got a story for you. Crazy. But that's how prevalent this is. This is not just a workplace issue. This is a life and work issue. Because what happens at home affects you at work. What happens at work affects you at home. If you're dealing with any kind of a stress at home, let's say it's family issues or relationship or childcare or financial, whatever the case may be, when you get dressed in the morning, that stress gets dressed with you and goes into the office. If you're being bullied at work, like I was, you bring that home with you. It doesn't just stop at the door. I woke up the next day and went, oh my God, I get to do what I'm passionate about now. And I knew that for me, it was all about re-engagement. I knew that I didn't have to live the way that I was living, and now I get to impart that. So that's all great. I'm really excited. But the worst was yet to come. I had to fly to Virginia and tell my parents what I had done. The husband was easy. It was my parents, right? When I went and told them, the first thing was giving me an inquisition worse than any auditor. Do you have this? Do you have retirement? Do you have long-term care? It's cool, guys. I'm okay. Don't have to worry. So in a moment of clarity, my father turned to me and he said, so honey, I don't really understand. You had a great career. Why did you do this? And I said, Dad, it's because I lost the passion. And he said, I get it. And couldn't have been happier, and he's now my biggest cheerleader. And the funniest story about my father is that when I was writing the book, my father was very excited about it, and he asked me all kind of about it, and he turned to me, this was in March, and he said, honey, even if not one person buys the book, it's still a great accomplishment. And guess what? He got his copy for free.